Hi Falcons, this is Mrs. Lamb, and today we're going to be doing lesson 12 in your workbook on page 282. Okay, so these are problems that involve percent increase or decrease. So if you would look at the warm-up, 12.1, an item cost X dollars and then a 20% discount is applied. So select all the expressions that could represent the price of the item after the discount. Go ahead and take a moment and come back. Okay, so a 20% discount. Well, if I just take 20% of the price, that's the amount of the discount, but it wouldn't be the price of the item after the sale. But if I take the price, which is X, and subtract 20% of it, then yes, number 2 would be one that would represent. And isn't number 3 the same thing as number 2? I've just used the distributive property to take the X out, and then I have 1 minus 20 hundredths, which is 0.2. So 3 is the same as 2. 4, 100 minus 20 would be 80 hundredths, or 80% of the price. Yes, I'm going to pay for 80% of it if it's 20% off. So then 5 is the same thing as 4. Another way to write 80% is 0.8. But 80 times the price is not going to give me the discount. It'd make the price more. So 6 is not one as well. So hopefully you chose 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now let's look at walking more each day. May started a new exercise program. On the second day, she walked 5 minutes more than on the first day. So day 2, the diagram shows that she walked 5 minutes more. On the third day, she increased her walking time from day 2 by 20%. And walked for 42 minutes. So on day 3, we know it all adds up to 42. So May drew these diagrams. So explain how this last diagram represents the situation. Well, day 1 is what she walked in a day. Day 2, we see the 5 more. And then on day 3, we know she walked that same amount, which would show this, and 20% more. So this is the 20%. We know that 20% is the same as 1/5, right? So if you divide what she walked into 5 sections, you're going to add 1 more of those sections. So she walked 1/5. Or if you look at the whole thing, it would be 120% is what she walked, which is the same as 1.2. So there's 2 different ways to kind of look at that, either as a fraction or as a decimal. So now the next one on the next page says, Noah says the equation 1.2 times d plus 5 equals 42 also represents. Do you agree with Noah? Well, yes, you should agree with Noah. We just talked about that. Because if I take what she walked on day 2, which was d plus 5, and then multiply by 120%, because she walked all of what she did plus the 20%, which makes 120%, then that equals the full amount, which was 42 minutes. So yes, because 100% plus 20% would be 120%, which is 1.2. That's kind of what we just talked about. So she walked 120% of day 2. Well, we know that day 2 was the d plus 5. She walked all of day 1 plus 5. So 1.2 times d plus 5 would equal 42. Okay, so that just kind of explains that Noah's thinking how it worked. So let's find the number of minutes May walked on the first day. Well, the first day, what did she walk? She walked, if you come back and look at the other diagram, on the first day she walked d miles, I suppose. So if I wanted to use the equation, I'm going to go back to this equation first and see how I could solve it looking at the equation, right? Okay, so I've added on some extra amount to get to 42. So let's just look at this. If I have 6 sections, which is 42, each section would be what? So let's take 42 and divide by 6 because there's 6 sections. Then I know that each amount here is equal to 7. Even this 20% would be another 7, right? So now I have 7 and I have 5 that I can take away from 42. And if I take away 12 from 42, that leaves me what D would be right here. And 42 take away 12 tells me D has to be 30. Okay, so I can just look at my diagram to help solve that problem, or I can solve it from an equation. So let's come back over here now and use the equation to solve it. So we had 1.2 times D plus 5 equals 42. So again, you have 2 choices here. You can distribute, or you could just divide. So let's divide both sides by 1.2. Because we have calculators. Take 42, divide by 1.2. And we get 35. So D plus 5 equals 35. And now how would I solve? Well, this is a one-step equation. We're going to subtract 5, and we find out that 1 day is 30 miles, or whatever. We're talking about kilometers. So the same answer we got by looking at the diagram and by solving the equation. Now, number 4. May has been walking indoors because of cold temperatures. On day 4 at noon, May hears a report that the temperature is only 9 degrees Fahrenheit. She remembers the morning news reporting that the temperature had doubled since midnight, and it was expected to rise 15 degrees by noon. May is pretty sure she can draw a diagram to represent this situation, but isn't sure if the equation is 9 equals 15 plus 2t, or 2 times t plus 15 equals 9. So let's look at drawing the equation. So what do we know? We know that the temperature was something. This is your temperature. And then it doubled since midnight. So since midnight, you're going to have 2 t's, right? It doubled. And then it was going to rise 15 degrees. So now you have the 2 t's, and it rose 15 degrees. So now which equation would represent this? Do you have 2 groups of t plus 15? Or do we just have, this would be 2t plus 15 equals 9? Because we know once it did this, it was equal to 9 degrees. Okay, so now if we want to find what the temperature was at midnight, okay, so here was at midnight, it was T. So I'm solving for T is what I'm going to do. So again, you can look at the diagram and you can see, okay, if I take 15 away from the 9, these 2 t's would have to be 9, take away 15 is going to be a negative 6. So then each t I can see would have to be equal to negative 3. Okay, but let's use our equation to solve the 2-step equation, and you would take away 15, undo the addition with subtraction, and you have 2 t's equal to a negative 6, which is the same thing our diagram showed. And then you would divide by 2, undoing the multiplication, and you end up with t is negative 3, which is the same answer. So either way, you can use an equation, you can use a diagram. It's going to give you the same results. All right, let's go to the last lesson for the day, 12.3, and we have different problems that are still going to involve you figuring out which equation to write and then solving that equation. So a store is having a sale where all shoes are discounted by 20%. Diego has a coupon for $3 off of the regular price for $1 shoes, for a pair of shoes. So he's got $3 off coupon, and they're being on sale by 20%. So the store first applies the coupon and then takes 20% off of the regular price. If Diego pays $18.40 for a pair of shoes, what was their original price before the sale and without the coupon? Okay, so here's what happened. We have that price before the sale and without the coupon, but then what happens? They took off the coupon first. So we're going to subtract the money that they took off, x minus 3. But then of this price, after they took the coupon off, they got it discounted by 20%. Well, if it's discounted by 20, how much did they pay for it? Well, they paid for it 80% of it. So you're going to take 0.8 times that discounted price with the coupon, and we know that that's going to equal $18.40. So now this is your equation to solve. Go ahead and solve that equation and see what you get. All right, I hope what you did at this point was you each divided by 0.8 and found out that x minus 3 was going to be 23. And then you would add 3, undoing the subtraction with addition, and x is 26. So $26 was the original price of the shoes. Okay, number 2. Before the sale, the store had 100 pairs of flip-flops in stock. After selling some, they noticed that 3/5 of the flip-flops they have left are blue. If the store has 39 pairs of blue flip-flops, how many pairs of flip-flops, any color, have they sold? So what is left? There is 39 pair of shoes left. And we know that there were 100 originally. And then they sold some, right? Whatever this amount is, after selling some, so after selling some, they had 100, they sold some, 3/5 they have left are blue. So we have 3/5 of the remaining, and we know that is 39. So if we look for x, we're going to find out the number that they've sold altogether. All right, so again, stop, solve the equation, and then come back and we'll check your work. In this case, I have a fraction, so I'm going to start by multiplying by the reciprocal. So 39 times 5/3 is 65, and that's going to equal 100 minus x. Okay, the next step would be to get rid of 100 by subtracting 100. And we have negative x equals negative 35. Now remember, when you don't see a coefficient, you know there's a 1, so you're going to divide by negative 1. And then we end up with x equals 35. So they had sold 35 shoes, or pairs of shoes. Okay, number 3. When the store had sold 2/9 of the boots that were on display, they brought out another 34 pairs from the stockroom. If that gave them 174 pair of boots out, how many boots were on the display originally? How many boots were on the display originally? So, if they sold 2/9 of the boots, that means that they have 7/9 of the boots left, right? 7/9 of the boots that were on display originally. And then they brought out another 34 pairs, and altogether that gave them 174 pair of boots.
Dylan Gregory, Wyatt Pratt, Hudson Artist, Leilani Morgan, Connor Harris, Ava.
For a minute because they were making announcements. So then this is the equation that you're going to need to solve. That was a little bit difficult because you had to realize that they sold 2/9, so that 7/9 was the amount that were on display originally, okay, that they still had on display. So I'm going to subtract the 34, and you have 7/9 x equals 140, and then you would multiply by that reciprocal, and you find out that x is going to be equal to 180. Okay, so there were 180 shoes originally. Number 4, I want you to go ahead and try to see if you can read and write that equation on your own, and then come back and we will check number 4. Okay, so on the morning of the sale, the store donated 50 pair of shoes to a homeless shelter. Okay, so they have X shoes and they donated 50 pair. Then they sold 64% of this amount. Okay, so if they sold 64%, then that means that 36% remained. So 36 of the remaining shoes was equal to 288. Okay, so when I want to solve, I can begin by dividing by 0.36. And you're going to get 800. So x minus 50 should be 800. I'm going to add 50. And x comes out to be 850 shoes. So all kinds of questions about shoes. So this chapter is all about when you have a % increase or a % decrease and finding out how to write those equations. So your practice starts on page 286, and you're going to do 1 through 5 on page 286. So I'm going to write that right up here, page 286, numbers 1 through 5. All right, have a good day, Falcons.